Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 42, The Meaning of Life, the Universe and Everything,
That's right.
of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we're discussing chapter 41, which means next week I'm going to make the same joke, of A Game of Thrones, which is Jon 5.
As always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some news. Be sure to check out our show notes. They provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I feel like that's my
Glad to hear
response
it.
every time you ask me that question each week.
Well, I've been in a bit of a... so again, for future listeners, we're in COVID lockdown, so we're still recording remotely, and we haven't seen anyone that isn't our family for months and months.
Yep.
I've been in a bit of a funk this week, actually, and we've had a very rainy week here.
We have. Whew.
Yeah. And I haven't played tennis all week, and I think that's been part of it. I played tennis today, and I feel much better now.
There you go.
Because I won.
That's what it is. You just needed the thrill of victory.
Exactly.
So we've been watching
What's going on with you?
a lot of TV in the evenings, as you know, it's kind of our thing, about an hour or so every night. And we just finished the 4th season of Last Kingdom, and for anyone who has not watched that show yet, Last Kingdom, it's a Netflix show. I think it's a BBC show actually that Netflix has. I don't know. Anyway, it's on Netflix, all 4 seasons. It is really good. The characters. Unfortunately, they all tend to have very similar names.
They do have similar names,
do.
that's for sure. I mean, I'm constantly looking that up because I don't know who they're talking about. They should all carry name tags.
They should. We do a podcast for A Song of Ice and Fire, and we can't even remember the names of Last Kingdom. So, yeah, it's a really good show, though.
I have to say, I would like to interject. I watch it too. And I don't rate it as highly as you. I mean, I like it fine, and I enjoy watching it. But you have, from the get-go, you've really liked that show.
I have, yeah.
And for me, I just feel like, and again, it's partly Game of Thrones. It feels like it's just not on the same level. I mean, and it isn't in terms of like cost and production values and things like that.
Yeah.
But just the story just feels, I don't know. It feels like once you've had Game of Thrones, this is,
Right. Yeah,
you're offering me a cheeseburger after my filet mignon,
Sure, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I could see that point. I really like the characters. I think there's a lot of good humor in it, and I think the characters are really interesting. And Uhtred, who is the main character, he's just a pretty cool guy. And
yeah. I mean, I do like it. I sound like I'm poo-pooing it, but I really enjoy it, and I like watching it, and I was looking forward to the 4th season, which I have started to watch, but not finished yet. I never watch shows as quickly as you do. I just don't.
We do try and get through them, although that's usually Stacy. I try and pace us, like one episode, like every day or every other day. Let's not rush through this, but she just can't hold back on some shows, so...
My family are becoming more and more nocturnal, so I'm able to watch some TV on my own first thing in the morning.
Right.
So I'm catching up on Westworld, which I've been...
I've not watched it.
I mean, that's typical HBO fare, high production values. And
yeah, I got to get HBO. I haven't had HBO in ages, so... Anyway.
As long as you promise to cut this out, I'll lend you my password. Yeah.
Don't give it on the air.
Yeah. That'd be funny. All right. Let's get down to business. I mean, honestly, we could talk for a lot longer, though. This is a short chapter. So
right,
we got plenty of time to talk here.
Could have a lot of
Let's get
dead
down
air.
To business. Yeah. A quick recap of what Jon was up to previously. So Jon had made friends with many of his fellow recruits at the wall and began showing them fighting techniques. He met and befriended a large and cowardly new recruit named Sam Tarley. Knowing that Master-at-Arms Ser Alliser Throne would send the other boys hard after Sam in fights, he convinced the rest of the recruits to go easy on Sam. He used Ghost's influence to convince Rast, who was not buying in. Before that, he said a poignant farewell to Tyrion and was still second-guessing his decision to join the Night's Watch. He's been worried about the extended absence of his Uncle Benjen north of the Wall. McKelly, why don't we give them the summary?
Jon and several of the other recruits, but not Sam, are being promoted to full Brothers of the Night's Watch. After Ser Alliser's announcement and subsequent reminder of how useless they are, the boys begin their celebrating, congratulating, and roughhousing merriment. Jon notices that Sam isn't joining in on the fun.
Jon asks Sam, who stands away from the rest, if he's okay. Sam says he's fine and that he's happy for Jon and the other boys. Before Jon can follow up, he's dragged into a ruckus and Sam disappears. The graduates are then treated to a grand feast.
Jon notices Sam is missing from the table and goes to leave, telling Pip that he's missing because he's been left behind and terrified about it. Jon and Ghost go for a ride down the Kingsroad so Jon can do some thinking. Before turning his attention to Sam and his woes, he thinks of his personal concerns. He could keep riding on the road and be back in Winterfell with his brothers. Instead, he turns back to Castle Black, knowing what he has to do.
Jon calls on Maester Aemon in the night. He explains that only Maester Aemon can save Sam by asking Lord Commander Mormont to graduate Sam from training before he's severely injured or killed. Aemon's steward argues that natural selection will determine if Sam survives or not, and that a weak coward has no place on the wall. Jon counters that, just like Aemon's Maester collar, where each link is of a different metal, so too are people, that Sam can offer a unique set of skills to the Night's Watch. He's well educated and has connection with animals. Maester Aemon agrees to think on the matter.
Yeah, not exactly.
That's it. That's all that happened.
Yeah, not exactly the most dynamic chapter we've had so far.
No. But, hey, it's sort of important that we move along here. I do think it's a little bit strange. Just actually, this I should have put this in pedantry, but just throwing this out. As you mentioned it, I thought it at the time, that you would give them a grand feast the day they're told they're ready to become men of the Night's Watch. It feels like you should do that when they take their vow.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that either.
Because
that's a good point.
For the ones who are there voluntarily, you might just be feeding them up for their long trek back south.
Yeah, that's true. Just
keep them hungry.
Right.
They might take the vows just for the feast.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had not thought of that. But it's been a while since we've been in at Castle Black. I did not look it up, but it's been good many episodes. We kind of been caught up in the triangle of Cat, Ned, and Tyrion. That whole thing has taken up a lot of the intervening chapters.
Yep.
We've had a few.
I noticed when I was trying to watch the TV show for this chapter that there was a long gap of no Jon in the TV show as well when nothing was happening here.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely not where the action in the realm is right now. No,
not right now. Hold on. So Alliser, he says that he's graduating some of them, but he's not saying that they deserve it. Right. He said that it's because a new crop of recruits is coming. That's the only reason he's promoting some of them.
Right.
So he can't be nice about it.
Yeah, he says that their hands are better used for manure shovels and swine herding. So he's not exactly giving them the hey, you guys are going to be great out there speech.
Yeah, and he tells them that, well, technically, once they take their vows, they will be men of the Night's Watch. They'd be fools to believe it. They still smell of summer, and all that trash talk that hardened northern men give the
that's right.
These youths.
It follows it up with, when the winter comes, you will die like flies. So I don't know that any universities are going to be asking Ser Alliser to do their commencement speeches anytime soon.
Like Nome, Alaska or something. Yeah, so the reason they're being graduated is because Gweren, who basically has the same job as Yoren, is bringing fresh recruits from the south, and apparently he's got a big crop of them. So
yes.
So it's worrying news for Sam, because Sam's being left behind, and I think Rast is being left behind too. Rast was not graduating.
Correct.
So Rast is the one person who wouldn't voluntarily agree to look after Sam.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody who voluntarily agreed to look after Sam is moving on.
Yeah.
So
There's no one to pass the word along. Hey, leave this boy alone.
And Rast can pass it on to the others. Like, hey, you beat up on that kid, and then he just washes his hands of it, saying, "Oh, it's not my fault. I'm still afraid of the wolf."
Right. I'm not beating up on him. So, what's his name? So Ser Alliser kind of goes through all of the graduates, and he uses a nickname for each one of them. So we went through and pulled out the actual name of each person that he gives a nickname for. So first is Toad, whose his actual name is Totter. And really all we know about Totter is that he's got an unpleasant voice. That's why he has hence the nickname Toad.
Uh-huh.
We got Stonehead, who is Halder. He is a stonemason's apprentice, or was a stonemason's apprentice, and he was one of the ones that was sent against Sam when Sam first arrived, and Jon stepped in to defend.
Oh, that's right. He's big and strong, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember him.
We've got Aurochs, who's Gren, and he is big and slow. And he was one of the guys that came to Sam's aid when Jon jumped in to protect Sam at that fight. Then we've got Lover. That's Darren. He's the one who was caught in bed with Lord Matthias Rowan's daughter. He was also a singer's apprentice, and they say he has a really great voice. So that's Darren. We got Pimple. Very unfortunate nickname. Albert is Pimple. And he was the third sent against Sam back in the fight that I referenced earlier. We got Monkey. That's Pip or Pipar. He was in a mummer's troop before coming to the Night's Watch, and he also jumped in on Sam's side in that fight. We've got Sir Loon, who is Matter. Literally could not find anything on Matter, so he's just another member of the recruits, I guess. And then, of course, we've got Jon. And if you remember, back before Jon started making buddies with all these guys, it was Gren and Toad were the two that really had issues with him because they were tired of getting beat up on him. They're part of the group that ganged up on him in the armory that Sir Donald Noy broke up.
So, just actually, I mean, a little early comparison with the TV show here. I'm pretty sure that Pip and Darien are rolled into one character in the show.
Okay.
Pip survives, but I don't think Darien exists in the show because I think those two backstories you just gave both belong to Pip.
Oh, all right.
Because Pip's certainly got the singing voice.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was in a mummer's troop, but I do know that his story of how he ended up at the wall was to do with... oh, no, that's not true. His story of ending up at the wall was stealing a wheel of cheese for his starving sister. Maybe not. I don't remember Darien in the TV show, though, so I have a feeling those two are slightly merged anyway.
Well, Pip also is the one that can do the accents and says he can tell people by their accent. Do you remember that right when we met Sam? He was talking about that.
He knew where he was from, yeah. So all these guys are going to be replaced by Gwern's new recruits. You were asking the question if Gwern and Yoren have the best job in the Night's Watch.
Well, it's just that they kind of just get to go off. Like, are they? How much time do they actually spend at Castle Black? It's. I was actually thinking more about it after I put that in the notes, and I thought, yeah, it's cool that they just get to go off into the realm and try and round people up, which, they may or may not be successful. No one can really check how hard they're working, but their per diem would probably be pretty low. So,
right, but I mean, non-zero,
Right.
I mean, a rough inn somewhere near King's Landing might be nicer than the Wall.
Yes. That's
could definitely hang out for a couple of days here,
I wonder how many of these wandering brothers that they have that just never wander back. They wander off to King's Landing or somewhere in the Reach, and they change clothes and disappear.
They're found 4 years later on a beach being fanned.
Right.
Like, I'm still looking. Don't behead me. I'm still looking.
So after they get their graduation announcement, and they do some merriment, and they kind of play fighting and wrestling and all that stuff, and that's when Jon sees that Sam's off by himself. He goes up to him, and Sam tries to reassure him and say, "No, I'm fine. I'm super happy for you guys. It's so great." But Jon can tell that he's lying, and But
Yeah.
after that,
I mean-
then the boys get this grand feast for, well, Night's Watch style grand feast. And probably has nothing on a daily dinner for King Robert, but for them it is quite I think it's rack of lamb they're served, which, so.
Actually, I've got a pedantry thing there. I'll bring that up. Remind me about this. I've got a pedantry thing about the grand feast.
Okay. Last time you said remind me about something in pedantry. We got to pedantry and we spent about 4 minutes trying to remember what it was. Do you remember that?
That's why I literally said, remind me it's about the grand feast. Yeah.
Oh.
We can always come back and listen to this and go, oh, that's right, it was about the grand feast. I may still forget.
But Jon barely eats because he can't really stop thinking about poor Sam. But in the meantime, the boys kind of talk about future. What's going to happen to them, where are they going to get assigned and all that. And Gren and Matter both mention that they want to be rangers. Halder says he wants to be a builder. Builders, you basically get the gist of the name builders kind of gives away what their job is.
Go on. Tell me more.
They work on, making sure the wall doesn't fall down, and they build tunnels and all that kind of stuff. And they also keep debris clear of the wall as best they can. It's a long wall, and of course there's not as many of them as there used to be, so that's a harder job than it once was, trying to keep the trees
debris falling from the wall. Oh, trees growing up to the wall.
Yes, they try to keep it clear so that wildlings and such can't get over the wall as easily.
Yeah, I don't know who's going where, but if they don't choose Halder for a builder, then they clearly have more choice than they pretended to have when they were asking for more resources, because he's a builder.
Right.
If you can choose a builder for something else, you aren't that short of resources.
And that's kind of what
he's going to be able to.
That's kind of what Darren says is to Halder. He says, "You're definitely going to be a builder, and Jon is definitely going to be in the Rangers because he's the best sword and he's of us, and he's the best on a horse." And then he says, and just like his uncle was before his uncle, and then he realizes he was about to say before his uncle was killed, and Jon kind of snaps because this is the second time this happens. Earlier, Sam said, you're going to be first ranger just like your uncle was, and Jon corrects him and says, is, and here he says, Benjen Stark is still first ranger. And he's refusing to accept that the rest of the guys seem to have accepted that Benjen Stark is gone, and he's refusing to accept that fact. And I wondered if, on top of his worry, obviously he's his uncle, so he loves him, he's worried about him. But if you recall, the last time when Benjen rode off and Jon wanted to come with him and he wouldn't let him, he was very angry with Benjen, and he had this image of Benjen laying dead on a path like north of the wall, and he kind of had this, like, remember back when Tyrion said the same thing about his family and Jon was aghast, and then he was feeling guilty because he just did the same thing. So he might be feeling a little guilty about his behavior right as Benjen left. Yeah.
So Jon leaves the feast because if Sam's not there eating at the feast, then Sam really is suffering.
But think of all the leftovers.
Well, true. Jon gets Ghost, and they ride out aimlessly south of the wall, to be clear, and they get to the top of the Kingsroad, and he starts thinking about what he might do in this moment.
Yeah.
He is not yet a sworn brother of Night's Watch, and the Kingsroad leads everywhere, basically.
Right, yeah.
The world is his oyster.
Yeah, he looks down it and thinks, all the places that this road leads to, I won't see any of them. And he specifically mentions Winterfell, which we know, River Run, which is where which is where Catelyn Stark is from, King's Landing, which we know, the Eyrie, which is where Cat and Tyrion and Lysa are right now. The Isle of Faces is an island in the middle of the God's Eye, and of course Harrenhal is on the north shore of the God's Eye, so, there's that. It's kind of the last bastion of werewoods in the south. They've all been cut down or burned, and there's folks known as Green Men who look over the Isle of Faces. Anyway, that's what that's all about.
We've talked about that before, haven't we? We talked about the Isle of Faces
Yes,
a little bit before we said
exactly. We said
that,
pretty much what we just said.
Yeah, every weirwood on there has got a carved face.
Correct. Yes. There's some believe that children of the forest still live on the Isle of Faces.
Right.
He mentions Casterly
that's
Rock.
one of the places I would like to visit if I wasn't a captive of the Night's Watch.
Right, yeah. He mentions Casterly Rock, which is where the Lannisters are from. Bravos, which, remember when he gave Arya Needle, it's a Bravos sword from Bravos, which is on
Very
Essos.
nice.
And of course, Valyria. Old Valyria is also on Essos. It's where the Targaryens were from. It's where dragons once reigned.
Technically, the Kingsroad doesn't lead to those last two, but I mean, obviously, you need to take the Kingsroad to get closer to them. Yes.
Sure, exactly. Anyway, so in case you're reading along and you were trying to remember with some of those places where that's where they are.
Yeah, but that he will never see those sort of echoes Benjen's words to him back when he was thinking about joining the Night's Watch. That have a little life, see some places.
Yep. Seems like pretty good advice now. Which we thought it was good advice at the time as well.
We've been telling you, John. Yeah.
Because we know how this chapter goes, we haven't gotten there yet, but John just has so much to offer. And I just wonder if not for Benjen already being a brother of the Night's Watch, would Ned have sent John? I know the North, the North respects the Night's Watch a lot more than anywhere else in the realm seems to. But boy, there's just so many things that John could have done that didn't necessarily have to keep him in Winterfell.
But I think that goes to him being baseborn. That being baseborn, it was very difficult for him to achieve those things. The things that we can see that he's born to are close to him. Yeah. Because of his last name.
Yeah, at some levels, definitely. He's certainly not going to rise. He's not going to become king, or he's not going to likely become Lord of Winterfell. But they could have fostered him somewhere, like maybe with the Karstarks or the Manderleys, or even somewhere outside of the North just to get him away from Cat. Or they could have married him to a second or third daughter in the Reach and maybe had a small stronghold or something. He could have become a hedge knight. There's just so many things where he could have had more to offer. But as far as members of the Night's Watch go, he certainly has a lot to offer them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all true. What you're saying is true. But it's a difficult one because, who would agree to foster someone's baseborn child, That's kind of like an honour and a slap in the face at the same time. Oh, Lord Stark, you want me to foster one of your children? Which one? Arya? Sansa? Oh, the bastard. I see.
Good point.
Still my beating heart. Yeah.
But once they got to know him, they would be like, we got a good one.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. So John does think about not taking the vows. He isn't like the others. He is voluntary. The others have no choice. It's to take the vow or face whatever punishment they were originally facing.
Yeah, we've mentioned this before when we were like, John, run. Go now.
Yeah. So if he went south to Winterfell, he could rejoin his brothers. But he doesn't know Cat's not there, so that would be even more tempting if he knew that.
Yeah, I sure would.
Get to hang with all three of his brothers.
Yeah, but as he thinks, there's no place in Winterfell for him or King's Landing. He's right, especially Winterfell. There's really no place for him in Winterfell. King's Landing's a big place, and there are baseborn men that do hold titles and positions in King's Landing. It's not unprecedented. So, maybe he's just been told by Cat or something so many times that he'll never amount to anything. I don't know, but he feels there's no place anymore for him in Winterfell or King's Landing. He even thinks that his mother had no place for him, and so then he starts wondering about his mother, and he wonders, who she was and why his father left her. And of course then that other little voice in his head said, because she was an adulterer or something dark and dishonorable. And of course that's why Lord Eddard is too ashamed to even talk about her.
Yeah. So he heads back to the castle, and Ghost, who'd been off hunting, finds him. And then John does what John does, and puts others first and puts in a word for a friend. He goes to see Maester Aemon and explains that Sam is ready for the Night's Watch, and the Night's Watch need him, but that he's never going to get through Ser Alliser's basic training because he's just not competent.
Yeah, he says even my little sister Arya could tear him apart, and she's not yet 10. Of course, Chet is one of Maester Aemon's 2 stewards. Chet thinks that Sam is weak and he's a coward, and that either Ser Alliser is going to turn him into a warrior or he's going to die, and it'll be what it'll be. And of course, John, he literally says that is stupid. And I really liked his comparison. The
people in the Night's Watch being like the links of the chain.
Yeah.
Yeah, the different metals of the chain represent different specialties of the Maester, and the different people in the Night's Watch. Well, I mean, they have stewards, they have rangers, they have builders. You know, there are roles for everyone.
Right.
But I think the one overarching thing, and Chet and Clydas, I think, are the two Aemon's 2 helpers. I think they both have a point that, first and foremost, the Night's Watch has to be able to defend the wall.
Certainly, yeah.
Sure, we can groom him for being a steward, but when the battle comes, that he needs to pick up a sword and fight.
Yeah. But until then, he's got other ways that he can offer you.
Right. Yes, exactly. Until then, he could be a really useful asset.
Yeah.
And there's no question, he's not going to ever graduate from Ser Alliser's
No, it's just never going to happen. He's going to stay there till he gets killed or severely injured.
Yeah, so we heard earlier that Geo Mormont, the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, was telling Tyrion that they needed more educated men. And here they are, one of the few educated men they've got.
Right.
He's not going to make it.
Yeah. And to me, I don't know. I know Lord Commander Mormont's got a lot of people to look over, and he's got a lot of snarks and grumpkins to keep at bay. But, now I sound like Tyrion. But it feels a little bit like a failure of Mormont, or at least there should be some sort of oversight of the recruits in case they get someone like this, because he was asking Tyrion, hey, would you stay and be a member of the Night's Watch? You're exactly the kind of guy we could use. They need people like Sam.
Right, and Tyrion too would not be able to graduate Ser Alliser's rough basic training. Yes, exactly. That's a good point. Yeah.
So seems like someone should be at least doing like an interview of these guys when they first get there to see what they've got.
Write your name. You can't. Okay.
Right.
So John was not present when Geo Mormont was telling Tyrion that they needed more educated men. So his pitch to Maester Aemon is actually kind of fortuitous. Maester Aemon did hear that conversation.
I don't think he did. I think they all left, and then it was just Gior and Tyrion.
I'm confusing it with the TV show, because in the TV show he did hear it.
Okay.
But in any event, Maester Aemon's a smart dude. You know, he is. But he's smart. He understands what's going on. He would share that philosophy even if he didn't hear it from Geo Mormont, that they need more educated people.
Yeah.
Especially because he's nearly 100 years old.
He is 100.
He can't expect. Right. He can't expect to be Maester for too much longer. Right. They need someone who can take his place.
They really do. Like, this is something they probably should have started planning for like 20 years ago. You know, some sort of succession plan for this incredibly aged Maester.
Yeah, and Chet and Clydas, I mean, I don't know how they are really. We just got a very sort of short introduction to them in this, but they did not seem like they were great wisdom, forward thinking.
Right.
You know. So.
In fact, the description mentions that Chet is an angry man. He's always seems to be angry, and it may be a little bit concerned that if they did manage to get Sam into this role, if, you know, Chet felt less like he had less role here, if he might take some retribution.
But he might, Right, that if a youngster came in and took over,
Exactly.
that might. Of course, it could be a succession.
Right. Yes.
It could be Chet next, then Sam after that. But
before long,
from the very brief thing we saw of Chet, Sam is clearly more competent than he is, or would be more competent.
We know Chet can't read because John mentions, I know Chet can't read. So
right. Yeah. So that's about it. I mean, I think it's a good pitch. I think Maester Aemon definitely would be interested, but we don't know how this is going to go.
Yeah, he paid John a really nice compliment. He told John that his mind is as deft as his blade, and that Maester Luwin taught him well. So that's a lofty compliment from someone such as Maester Aemon.
Yep. So to background.
Yeah,
we're going to pad with background because there wasn't much going on in this chapter.
Right. And if that fills up, we'll just start talking about random stuff. So there wasn't a whole lot to go on in background in this chapter. There wasn't a whole lot to go on in general. So I thought we talked a little bit about maesters in the past. I thought I'd go in a little bit more in depth into what it takes to be a maester and all that stuff. So like we mentioned before, maesters study at the Citadel, and there is no age requirement. So men and boys alike come to Old Town to study at the Citadel. And like the Night's Watch, there's also not a social status requirement. So everyone from baseborn boys to royalty have studied to be maesters. Unlike traditional college classes, in our world, archmaesters give open lectures, and any student is welcome to attend if they choose. And there's no grades like pass, fail in the classes or anything. Rather, once a student thinks he's got the material down for a particular subject, he goes before an archmaester to demonstrate his knowledge. And if an archmaester judges the student's knowledge to be proficient, boom. He awards them with a link of a medal reflecting that particular topic. But of course, not everyone will complete their chain. Old Town is full of aging novices and acolytes who have never started nor even finished forging their chain. So, some have 0, some might have 1 link, 2 links, and they just can never master enough subjects to become full-blown maesters. Others leave the Citadel before completing their chains on purpose. Some highborn boys come to study like certain subjects and then leave. Or some students might come just to learn about a subject like healing, and then they go off and become barbers and serving small folks with leeches and setting broken bones and shaving and cutting hair and all that kind of stuff. So how long it takes a student to earn his chain is up to the individual student. Some might take a year or longer per link, while others might earn 3 or more per year, although that's pretty rare. They use the term forge their chain, but that is a metaphor. They don't actually physically forge their own chain. They're given a link that is pre-forged. And it's possible to earn multiple links in the same metal. Doing so signifies the expertise of a maester on a particular subject. And so we were talking before, that when we first met Sam, which I think was the last time we saw John, and about how cruel it was that Sam's dad, Randall Tarley, chose the Night's Watch instead of the Citadel, because ultimately it would have led to the same thing. You have to give up your lands, you have to give up you don't have to give up your last name in the Night's Watch, but you have to give up your last name as a maester. So we thought that would have been a much better fit for him. But as I was thinking about it, he probably didn't choose the maester path for Sam because it would have taken too long for him to take his maester's vow and lose his house name.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So, and I couldn't find a specific number of links needed to become a maester, but I did find that some had as many as 6 links and weren't full maesters, so I'm guessing it's at least 6 links.
It's got to go around your neck, so it sort of depends. If you're a skinny guy, you might be able to do it in 5.
Could you do it as a ring?
I'm a maester now.
Oh. So it would have taken at least a couple years for Sam to become a maester, and at any time during those 2 years, he could have quit and
changed his mind. Yeah,
kept his claim as the heir to House Tarley. So I'm guessing that's why Randall Tarley chose the Night's Watch.
You know what? I'm not a big fan of Randall Tarley, but yes, this is a good rationale for why he sent Sam somewhere where clearly Sam would be more unhappy than somewhere else he could have sent him.
Right. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that.
Yeah.
So I've got a bit of ancient history to throw in. Doesn't really come up in this chapter either, but there's a tangential relationship to the thing I mentioned earlier about the feast. So, the fourth Targaryen king was Jaehaerys I. He was known as the Conciliator. After Aegon the Conqueror's death, the kingdom was in a fair degree of turmoil.
Might that have
driven by the?
Might some of that have been because of Maegor the Misunderstood, Jaehaerys' predecessor?
Or Maegor the Cruel, depending on your point of view. Yes. So I was going to just I was going to sort of push Maegor under the rug here and just mention internecine squabbling over the succession and both ecclesiastic and lay outrage at the Targaryens' incest. I mean, that was really causing a lot of trouble in the kingdom.
Right.
Jaehaerys took the throne at the age of 14, already secretly married to his sister, Alysanne.
Right.
What wise heads predicted more years of strife to follow, but the new king and queen did a really good job of reuniting the kingdom, driven in large part by the personality of Alysanne. She was a force of nature. She was kind, thoughtful, unbound by tradition, beautiful. Wherever she went, everyone just loved her.
Readers love her. Readers, especially like those who have read Fire and Blood and A World of Ice and Fire, they really like her.
So, the two of them, Alysanne and Jaehaerys, regularly toured the kingdom on their dragons, Vermithor and Silverwing, his and hers, respectively. She made friends, built bridges wherever she went. On a particularly fabled trip to the north, Jaehaerys was delayed, and so she went north on her own for a while. The very proud Lord Alaric Stark was all too ready to take offence that the king hadn't shown up, but Alysanne won him over completely. On the same trip, she visited the wall. She met with the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and recognising that the strip of land south of the wall, known as Brandon's Gift, which basically was owned by the Night's Watch and used by them to farm and supply them, wasn't enough. It was simply not enough. So she arranged for its doubling in size. And the problem with that was, of course, that was land that belonged to the Northern Lords.
Right.
The land she was planning to give to the Night's Watch currently belonged to Northern Lords. Sure. Alaric Stark was like, this ain't going to fly. But again, she charmed him, she convinced him, and everything was smoothed over. And she was just particularly good at this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so this new strip of land became known as the Queen's Gift. I'm now just sort of like blathering on about her. She also prevailed upon her husband and his small council to outlaw the tradition of First Night, where a local lord could deflower a maiden on her wedding night. So she was a bit woke as well.
Yes, right.
For her time. Although Jaehaerys and Alysanne were only 2 of 6 siblings, and they had an uncle, Maegor the Cruel, by various circumstances, they were the only ones to have male Targaryen issues. So the entire Targaryen line traces back to these 2.
Right. They had a lot of issues. They had 14 kids, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they?
I believe they did have a lot of children, yes. But all of this was before they... Oh, no, it wasn't before they had any children. They already had a couple of children at this point. But it was while they were still young that all this was going on. So anyway, this goes to the pedantry thing I was going to mention. I'll bring it up now, even though we're not at pedantry yet. But given how much land she arranged for the Night's Watch to have then, and the fact that the Night's Watch has dwindled in numbers since, there should be plenty of land for a nice big feast. It shouldn't be a barren thing.
It might have to do with good crops they can grow or something, that far north.
True. I mean, I mean, you'd think it would be kind of potatoes and things, but, lamb, sheep are hard.
Right, yeah, that's a good point. Should be having rack of lamb every day.
Exactly. I did wonder if perhaps one of the things to think about with the Night's Watch is they need a lot of resources that aren't available in the Queen's Gift, presumably.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I wonder if they use the surplus to trade for things.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Good point. Yeah. If they hadn't thought of that, they should have.
Yes. So hopefully, see, that's the kind of thing Sam would bring to the table if he was. So, comparison with the TV show, there is nothing to compare because this entire chapter was dropped from the TV show. Just wasn't in there at all.
See, I told you guys, if you just stuck with us, eventually we'd get to something that didn't line up with the TV show. This and Bran's dream.
The one thing that survived was Ser Alliser's comments about the lads being fools not to believe themselves truly men of the Night's Watch. That was captured in an earlier scene where he was terrorizing Sam and Jon.
Okay.
But this is completely skipped over this whole chapter. So to pedantry, in addition to what I was just saying about feast, they would feast every night. But the TV show dropping this chapter does make this whole thing seem a bit worthless. And then that goes to what you were saying before about, is this a failure of Jeor Mormont not to recognize what his new recruits have brought to the table?
Yeah, right. You know, I get it. Probably 99 out of every 100 recruits they get
aren't worth asking.
Right. But especially when you know that one is the son of a very high, well-respected lord, you should probably look in on things and see how he's doing.
Right. Exactly. If he hasn't come from a jail,
right,
he's worth talking to find out what the heck he's doing there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a good point. But then, actually, I have a slightly different take on this. What if Jon is just interfering? What if Jon is good-natured and wants the best for Sam. What if he's underestimating the smarts of the people around him? Maester Aemon and Jeor Mormont might be like, we're going to fish that Sam kid out of there because, of course, if they had have said that to Ser Alliser, then he probably would have been in the list of kids being graduated.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But, yeah, that is true. I've undermined my own comment there. Thank God for Jon. I think Jon's going to be Sam's saviour here.
Well, maybe they were hoping that Ser Alliser would do the right thing and graduate him. And when he didn't, they're going to go pull him out of there.
Yeah. The only real point to the chapter seems to be the opportunity to meet Maester Aemon a little bit.
Yeah.
But we don't really get to know much about him other than he's old and creaky.
Right.
But
he does seem incredibly intelligent. He even allowed Chet, he said, Chet, how do you think we should handle this, when Chet was kind of grumbling about this, this kid being a coward. And he let him say his piece, and he was like, okay, that's a valid point. And then he let Jon say his rebuttal, and it felt like he was leading Jon along, like, and what does that lead you to believe, So I think he picked up on what was going on pretty quickly and just let Jon talk it through to make his point.
Okay, so to news and notes. Now, you may have to indulge me here because I got a lot to talk about.
I'm very interested. I'm just going to sit back and listen.
So we had an excellent question from a new listener, Jeremy. Thank you, Jeremy, for reaching out.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, he asked if a Westerosi year might not be the same length as one of ours, and that's absolutely something that I should have thought about when we were discussing astronomy in the seasons. He points out the apparent maturity of some of the children as if they are older than they are said to be.
Right.
And so if a year is longer, let's assume that day is the same length, but if a year was 400 days or something, then a 14-year-old child would be more like 16 our years, you see. That
fits very well.
That's the point he's making, exactly. Now, I contended back to him that obviously in a pre-industrial age, children are expected to grow up faster, but some of this growing up is physiological. These 14-year-olds in Winterfell are growing beards considerably better than my own. So there are reasons to believe, astronomically there are reasons to believe that their year wouldn't be massively different from ours, because planets that are the right distance from a star to support life,
right, Goldilocks
the Goldilocks zone, exactly, would roughly have the same orbital speed, and so their year would not be massively different, but easily 10 or 20% could be understandable. And so if someone like Dany is 13 years becomes something like 16 years, that actually makes things sit a little bit better. So I'm going to cling on to this as a very good idea, Jeremy. And then Jeremy also got me thinking and talking about the random seasons. How is there a possible explanation for the random seasons? And he was offering some ideas. And sort of in the discussion, we came up with what I think is a slightly plausible theory. I've since learned that it's not my own. Other people have had this theory before, so. but I did come up with it independently. So let's assume the planet doesn't have a tilted axis. The reason we have seasons is because the axis has a tilt. Okay.
Right.
If the planet doesn't have a tilted axis, it just goes around, and every day the sun comes up at 6 a.m. and it goes down at 6 p.m. every day of the year. There are no seasons. All right.
Right.
But what if there were some huge volcanoes way north, say, in Westeros, or perhaps north and west like Iceland is to Europe, sort of thing?
Okay.
And these volcanoes occasionally erupt, pumping sulfates into the upper atmosphere. It's known from geological history of Earth that can cause very severe years-long winters to occur.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah, it makes a good amount of sense.
And
however,
could I take this one tiny step further? What if when those volcanoes erupt, that's what brings the others down from the north?
I went the same thought. Winter might very well be presaged by dark roiling clouds coming from the north, leading to all kinds of superstitions in the north about winter coming and what it heralds, you see.
Yes.
The only downside of this is that I think at some point in the future in the book, not to spoil, but I believe a Maester says that they base their predictions of when winter is coming on the length of the days.
Okay, yeah, that would ruin that theory.
That ruins this entirely. But it could perhaps be a combined effect. Maybe there is a slight tilt, so slight...
Right, sure. Yeah, it doesn't completely kill the theory.
No.
And besides, you're just conjecturing anyway. It's not like...
Exactly.
I figured it out.
Apparently when George Martin was confronted with this, he just said, oh, it's magic, you know. So he didn't think it through the way I'm thinking it through.
Right.
So I've also since read another very compelling explanation from Wageningen University in the Netherlands. Planet Earth has 3 independent cycles that can lead to warmer or colder climates. Sometimes they cancel each other out, sometimes they reinforce, and you get more extreme summers, more extreme winters. On Earth, these cycles are multi-thousand year long, so seeing the effects is very hard to do.
Sure.
On the planet where Westeros is, imagine these cycles are much shorter. Now, 3 overlapping cycles could very much look like random noise to an uneducated person or a semi-educated person. And these cycles, basically, they are to do with how elliptical the planet's orbit is around the sun, how the tilt precesses. So hold your finger up, McKelly. Hold your finger up straight. Now tilt it to an angle of 23.5 degrees to the vertical.
Okay, I'm following your lead there.
Okay, so you just tilted it that direction, but you could have tilted it any direction, couldn't you? You could have gone that way, and that would have also been there. In fact, there's a whole circle of answers which are 23.5 degrees away from the vertical, right?
Okay, yeah.
And that is what our Earth's axis does. It goes through its circles, this precession. Takes thousands and thousands of years. So, for instance, the implication of that is, right now, our axis points right at Polaris, but in 10,000 years from now, it's not going to point anywhere near Polaris. It's going to point to a completely different star.
Wow.
So
deep stuff.
That's what precession is. The other one is the tilt changes. I didn't know this. The Earth's axis is tilted at about 23.5 degrees. That changes between 22 and 24.5 degrees over time. And that also goes through a cycle. Now, put all those together, exaggerate their values, you could end up with really random seasons. Very, very easy.
Sure. I like it.
Yeah. I think that one's compelling. I'm going to combine it with my volcanoes because my volcanoes give us the fear of winter that the Northern
Right, yes. I like all of it. Now we need to get Neil deGrasse Tyson on here to discuss all these.
Yes.
You know what the moral of all this is? Write into us. You have ideas? Look at how much time we just spent.
There is a second point. Don't write into us. You'll just set Simon off.
We have so much fun with the folks we interact with. So please interact in any way you can, any way you want. Yeah. We'll love it.
Are you telling me that George Martin bought a train?
He did. No, he bought a train. He and a couple of investors bought a train. but it's kind of fallen apart, so they're going to fix it up and make it all fancy and stuff again. And he gave the reason.
It's practically Disney World.
Yeah. Growing up as a kid, all he wanted was a Lionel train set. He got this like third hand-me-down little train set from a cousin or so. And he got to put it around the Christmas tree. It ran a few times. Christmas tree came down. The train set disappeared. Next thing you know, it showed up at another younger cousin's house. So he'd always wanted a train, so he bought himself a train. And if you want the complete and probably more accurate details, you can always check out George Martin's blog. It's called Not a Blog. So if you just Google George Martin Not a Blog, you will find his blog.
I see. There we go. So let's conclude. Yeah. Jon is, as we know, he's one of the good ones. And
yeah. Just seems pretty much no matter how high he rises in the Night's Watch, his talents are being, at least on some level, underutilized.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
He could have been a great lord somewhere.
And Sam's another one who could end up being horribly underutilized. I mean, I think Sam could be utilized.
Oh, yeah.
Not if he's dead.
He could be a very unique talent in the Night's Watch. Aside from Maester Aemon,
yeah.
I don't know how many people they have like him currently. He's well educated. He's thoughtful, and he could be used in ways that most of the other men are not.
Amen.
And working with Maester Aemon could be a huge opportunity for him to grow in confidence and education. He could basically get his own Maester's training right there at the Citadel with little aged Maester Aemon.
Yeah. Or not at the Citadel, but instead of at the Citadel.
Yes,
yeah,
right there at Castle Black.
I understand what you meant. Yeah, and a succession plan is needed. Maester Aemon ain't long for this world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maester Aemon's a good resource. It's good. It's a good win for the Night's Watch that they have someone like Maester Aemon. I'm not sure how much longer that'll be, but
yeah, for sure.
And the Night's Watch boys are apparently pretty easy to please.
They get excited about this. I mean, to be fair, it is the biggest event in the rest of their lives.
Right. After this, it's pretty much all just mundane, day after day.
Exactly. So, yes, I don't really blame them. Well, good.
Yeah.
Quite a short one, but that's good. Get us back to our lives.
Right. Well, as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com. Please go out and follow us on Twitter if you wouldn't mind, at Ghost Harrenhal. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And please help us get the word out. If you like what we're doing, leave us a review on iTunes or Podchaser or wherever you listen. That will really help us. Okay, thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.